Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. It all came to light accidentally, as such things do. I had come home from work feeling sick and was lying on the couch in the family room with my eyes closed. I had just parked my car in the garage. It was a warm Phoenix afternoon, so I had shut the garage door behind me after pulling inside. My wife didn't know I was home. When she pulled into the driveway, she left her car outside the garage. She and her sister Victoria came in through the front door and went into the kitchen. The sofa was facing away from the entry to the family room, so they couldn't see me lying there. I was about to get up and announce my presence, but when I lifted my head, I got so nauseous that I fell back down on the sofa again until the feeling passed. In the meantime, I was barely aware of their conversation in the kitchen. I gathered that my wife had stopped at our house on the way to drop off Victoria to show her a new dress she had bought for their annual outing to Las Vegas. Once a year for the last 4 years, the two of them took a weekend trip together from our home in Phoenix to Sin City to take in a show and visit the art galleries. Victoria's husband Greg and I would stay home and watch the kids while they were gone. We felt that they worked hard looking after our preschool kids during the year, and we could afford to give them a weekend away from their responsibilities. By the way, my wife's name is Melissa, and mine is Ethan. We have 2 kids, Tyler, 5, and Dylan, 2. Melissa and I had been married for 7 years, and I was a middle manager in a large logistics company. We managed to live reasonably comfortably on my salary. My wife is a very active woman and has worked to maintain her figure after 2 kids. We have a healthy, intimate life and really enjoy each other. I thought we were the perfect couple and had the perfect marriage. Victoria lives a few blocks away, and we do most things together as families and as good friends. Victoria was a slightly younger version of my wife, and the two were almost inseparable. They have a daughter, Sophie, who is 3. As I quietly continued to lie there waiting for my episode of nausea to pass, I could hear Victoria exclaiming over the dress my wife was showing her. "My gosh, that's a sexy dress. Has Ethan seen it? And does he know you're taking it on the trip?" "No. If he saw it, he might get suspicious, so don't say anything. Okay? Brandon is really going to get a charge out of it." Who the hell is Brandon? I thought. My nausea had passed, but I continued to lie there, waiting to hear more. "Are you going to take a little something for Trevor?" my wife asked. Who the hell is Trevor? I thought again. "I have some special lingerie I've kept hidden from Greg that will really turn him on," Victoria responded. "I have some special lingerie too that Ethan hasn't seen either. That's sure to fire Brandon up." Good God, I thought. They must be having affairs, and it sounds like they know these guys pretty well. I was stunned and shocked by the implications of what I was hearing. Who were these guys? And how long and how often had they been meeting? My mind was already spinning from what I'd heard so far as they continued to talk. "Are you going to continue on your birth control pills again this year?" "Yes. I only wanted 1 child from Brandon. It's lucky that he and Ethan look so much alike. Ethan's mother even thinks Dylan is the spitting image of Ethan." My God. My God. I suddenly felt like I'd been kicked in the gut, and now my nausea was hitting me like a sledgehammer. I struggled to hold on to my heaving stomach. I wanted to be sick so badly that the bile was forcing its way up my throat. Thankfully, at that moment they decided to leave so Melissa could take Victoria home. I got up off the sofa quickly, heading for the downstairs bathroom as they were closing the front door. I barely made it to the toilet. The nausea overtook me, and I was violently ill. Thank heaven the lid was up. I must have emptied my entire stomach, and I still had the dry heaves when I finished. It took me a second to realize that I needed proof of any infidelity and that I needed to get out of the house before Melissa got back. Hurriedly, I sprayed some air freshener in the bathroom, grabbed my jacket, and ran into the garage. I got in my car, opened the garage door, and took off down the street, shutting the door behind me. I drove to a nearby mall parking lot and sat in my car, thinking about what I was going to do. I thought about getting hold of my brother-in-law Greg and telling him what I'd heard. But my mind was reeling in denial that Melissa was unfaithful to me and Dylan might not be my son. I felt sick, but my anger was beginning to grow as I dwelled on her liaison with some guy named Brandon. What the hell am I going to tell Greg about Victoria and Trevor? I needed some legal advice right away to determine what my options were in the event this turned into a divorce. The girls were leaving on their outing in 4 days. I had a lot of ground to cover before then. Using my cell phone, I called my friend, golfing partner, high school buddy, and personal lawyer, Paul Richardson, and asked his secretary Susan if I could get in to see him as soon as possible. Susan knew me and could tell from my voice that something was wrong. She asked if I could be in his office in 15 minutes. I responded affirmatively and drove the few blocks quickly. When I entered Paul's office, Susan took one look at me and exclaimed, "Ethan, you look like hell. I've just received some bad news, Susan, and I think I'm coming down with something. Is he available now?" I asked. "Yes, go right in," she told me, wringing her hands in distress as she looked at me. I rushed past her, knocked once, and entered Paul's inner office. Paul stood up as I entered and waved me to a chair in front of his desk. "Good God, Ethan, what's up? You look terrible." "Paul, I've just been hit with a double whammy. One I think I'll recover from, and the other is doubtful at this time." "Tell me about it," he said as he sat down. "First, I should warn you, I think I'm coming down with something. And second, I think I have a problem with Melissa. I need some advice." "Okay, the first shouldn't be a problem. I've had a flu shot. And any problem concerning Melissa is inconceivable. I've known you both since you were married, and I never saw a more perfect couple. Tell me about it anyway." I related to Paul what I'd heard that afternoon. "I can't believe that Melissa or Victoria would do something like that. And if Melissa deliberately conceived a child by another man, it's really mind-blowing. What do you think you want to do? Do you want a divorce? Or do you think you can work your way around the child and her infidelity? At the present time, I don't know how I could forgive her. You know I don't handle divorce cases, but I can put you in touch with a good divorce lawyer who will walk you through the whole thing if that's your desire. You're going to need proof other than what you heard of any infidelity, and especially of Dylan's paternity. Do you want me to call him and make an appointment?" "Please do." I sobbed as the enormity of what I was about to do suddenly hit me. Paul looked at me sadly as he buzzed Susan. "Susan, will you get me David Morgan on the phone?" "Oh God, no," I heard Susan exclaim, but Paul was quickly connected. "David? Hi, it's Paul. Do you have time to talk with a good friend of mine about a problem he's having?" There was a pause as Paul listened, and then turned to me. "How about tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in David's office? Same building. It's getting a little late in the afternoon now." "Okay, I'll be there," I nodded. "I would suggest you go home now, and try not to let Melissa know there's a problem. This may not turn out to be what you think, and you might do some irreparable damage to your marriage." "You're right. I've got to control myself until I'm sure. Thanks for your help, Paul." We stood and he grasped my hand. "I'm so sorry about this, Ethan. You and Melissa have always been my dearest friends. We've known one another for a long time. Your grief is mine. Thanks again, Paul. I'll be in touch and let you know what happens." Susan looked at me with tears in her eyes on my way out. "I'm so sorry, Ethan." "Thanks, Susan." When I got home that evening, it was about my normal workday arrival time, so Melissa didn't notice anything different. But she immediately commented on my appearance. "Ethan, honey, you look terrible. Are you feeling well?" I gritted my teeth. I so wanted to lash out at her, to hurt her in the way I was hurting at the thought of her possible unfaithfulness. However, I responded, "I think I'm coming down with something." Then I added maliciously, but with a forced smile, "I hope I'm better in a few days, so you can still go on your outing." I could see that she was momentarily shaken by the thought, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, you probably just have a touch of the flu. You should be better by Friday." "I hope so. The way I feel now, I just want to lay down. So can I take a rain check on dinner until later?" "Sure, honey. Go get into your pajamas and go to bed." "Why didn't you leave work earlier?" "I tried, but I had too many things going on at work." I lied. "Take a couple of aspirin and I'll come up in a while to check on you." The kids enjoyed their once-a-week daycare today. Victoria and I went shopping as usual, and I saw the cutest pair of sandals, but they didn't have my size, so I didn't buy anything. My mind was numb with sickness and grief as I stumbled upstairs to our bedroom. I didn't want to get near the kids, so I left them alone playing in the family room. I especially couldn't look at Dylan yet. Oh God. What if he wasn't my son? What would I do? I remembered that before Melissa had gone on the outing 3 years prior, she had not allowed intimacy between us the week before and the week after the event because she claimed she had an infection. She deliberately had been with him to have his child. It was very hard to accept the magnitude of her betrayal. I didn't wake up until the next morning, feeling somewhat better and determined it was just a 24-hour flu. But the sudden recollection of what I'd heard the previous afternoon left me depressed. I looked at Melissa sleeping next to me. She looked so peaceful and innocent that I had a hard time picturing her with another man. But I knew I had to steel myself to that possibility. I went into the bathroom, took a shower, and then dressed for another workday. I had a cup of coffee and left the house before Melissa came downstairs. I heard her upstairs with the kids. They always managed to get up early, but I still couldn't face them yet. I had breakfast at Denny's and then got into work early, trying to concentrate on the job. Around 8:30, I went in and told my boss I'd be taking a couple of hours of personal time that morning. He just acknowledged it with a nod of his head. "How are you feeling this morning? You didn't look too good when you left here early yesterday," he asked. "I'll be fine, Jack. It may take some time to get over it," I replied. He was talking about my sickness, but my mind was on Melissa. At 9 o'clock, I was at David's door, and his secretary escorted me into his office and closed the door as she left. David had an informal grouping of easy chairs around a low table, and as we greeted one another, he waved me over to one of the chairs and took one across from me. "In this business," he said, "I find this more conducive to relaxing my clients because divorce is a very emotional issue and requires a lot of personal involvement. I have some decaf coffee here if you're interested. So why don't you tell me about it, and we'll go from there." I poured myself a cup of his coffee and started my story. When I finished, he thought for a moment and asked, "Do you love your wife?" I thought I loved her more than life itself. But when I think about what she might have done to me, I get all cold and empty inside. And angry. It's like she's someone I don't know anymore. A stranger. I keep hoping this is a bad dream and I'll wake up and everything will be okay. Also, I've got to consider the children in all this. They're my greatest concern. Well, I guess we need to find out for sure if she's committing adultery, and then, if what you heard is true, you can decide whether to proceed with a divorce. We are going to need to hire an investigator to check on what your wife is doing in Las Vegas this weekend. This could be a little expensive, so I would suggest getting your brother-in-law involved to share expenses. It sounds like, if it's true, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, pretty much. Then I think we need to make some DNA checks to verify the paternity of your children. I would suggest your brother-in-law does the same thing, but you can talk with him about it when you see him. We need to set up another appointment with him in attendance. I don't want to get Greg involved before our wives go on their outing. Right now, I'm having trouble relating to Melissa as I would normally be doing. I could attribute my abnormal behavior to the flu, but if I tell Greg and he starts acting funny toward Victoria, they may suspect something. Okay, that makes sense. Now, can you give me your wife's itinerary so I can provide it to the investigator? I'll need the name of the hotel, and a room number would be helpful if she has a special one reserved. I think they do reserve the same room every year, so I'll get that for you along with any itinerary they have. They fly and use taxis or shuttle buses when they get there. Okay, that makes it easier to keep track of them. Next, you've got to secure your finances. Do you know what I mean by that? I think I have an idea. You've got to protect your assets. We have to assume right now that what you heard is correct, so wherever your wife has access to joint accounts, credit cards, etc., think about changing the beneficiaries on your insurance policies to your children. It's been known to happen that when a spouse becomes aware of an impending breakup, they run and clean out all accounts. You can always change it back if there's no problem. You can be as generous as you want on your joint checking account so she can exist until she finds a job or a new dwelling place. I'll leave that up to you. When you talk to your brother-in-law, you can give him a heads up there too. When we sit down to negotiate a divorce settlement, we can go for a split of both your assets. I'll get started on ours today then. Then I hope all this turns out to be a false alarm for you. But if it turns out what you heard is true, You should be able to gain custody of your older son without any problem. Okay. Thanks, David. I'll get that itinerary for you by tomorrow. After leaving David's office, I went straight to the bank and closed all our joint savings and CD accounts, placing the funds in an account in my name only. I left $1,000 in our joint checking and moved the rest into my savings account. Then I contacted my stockbroker and moved our funds into my own account. He was a little concerned about what it meant, but I didn't enlighten him. I wanted to cancel our credit cards, but I was afraid that if a charge was refused while they were in Las Vegas, it might alert them, so I decided to wait until I heard from the investigator. Then I went back to the office and tried to concentrate on my work until it was time to go home. I couldn't seem to stomach my lunch. I didn't know whether it was due to remnants of the flu or the thoughts of my wife. Pictures of her being with some other guy went through my mind, and my anger and stress level soared. I knew I had to keep myself under control. When I got home that evening, I feigned continued sickness. Melissa appeared to be concerned. Why didn't you stay home today? You shouldn't have gone to work at all. I didn't want to give it to you and the kids. If you got it, then you may not be able to go on your outing with Victoria this weekend, I said, waiting for a reaction. You could be right. Maybe you should sleep in the spare room tonight, or until you feel better, I suggested, making sure her weekend plans with her lover wouldn't be interrupted. It was going to be very difficult to keep from letting her know I suspected something for the next few days. I managed to get some dinner down. Instead of going in to watch TV afterward, I went to the computer to check my email. While I was there, I thought I'd check and see what emails she was receiving on her account and discovered she'd changed her password. I played around a little while and discovered her new password with Dylan's name and birth date. When I opened it, I hit the mother lode. A series of emails from someone with the username Walsh. I copied them over to a new file to print off later. I read a few to confirm what I'd hoped I wouldn't find. Proof of her infidelity. They must have communicated to arrange this weekend. They might be using the telephone while I'm at work too. Most of their plans had been made before this, so I didn't expect to learn much more if I tapped the phone line now. The emails would provide an adequate written record of their plans. Now I would just have to wait. The next day, I faxed a copy of the itinerary to David and tried to continue working as normal, but it was very hard. My boss and my secretary knew something was wrong but didn't say much except to ask if I was still sick. I just told them it was hard to shake and kept on working. I printed off Melissa's emails from Walsh after reading them and mailed the copies to David. I now knew they had been meeting on this annual outing for 4 years and that Brandon and Trevor registered in one room and Melissa and Victoria in an adjoining room. That way the lovers could each share a room and be together. They reserved the same rooms every year, so I passed the information on the room numbers to David as he requested. I also learned that Brandon and Trevor were married and lived in San Diego. They took in the annual boat show at the same time every year, leaving their wives home to look after the kids. Finally, it was Friday. Melissa and Victoria would be heading to the airport in Victoria's car around noon and leave it there until they got back on Sunday. I got up and went down to the kitchen. Melissa was there with coffee made and cooking a bacon and egg breakfast. Normally I just had cereal, so I thought this must be something special. This morning I want to give you a good breakfast anyway before I go. I worry about you, you haven't been eating well all week. That flu must be really hanging on. I'm sorry we haven't been intimate this week, and I thank you for trying to protect me and the kids. I really appreciate it. When I get back Sunday, you should be feeling better, and I'll show my appreciation then, Melissa said. Thanks, Melissa. I'd be looking forward to it, I replied and gave her a chaste kiss on the cheek. She seemed pleased. Don't forget to be home by noon today, as you'll have to start your babysitting duties, so we can get to the airport. No, I haven't forgotten, I growled back, momentarily forgetting the need to stay in control. But the pressure of my thoughts regarding what she planned to do this weekend was getting to me. What's the matter, Ethan? Are you mad at me for some reason? No, I was just clearing my throat. Must have been some phlegm, I replied, smiling innocently. She looked at me oddly for a moment, but I kept my face relaxed and attentive as she resumed her chatter. After breakfast, I put on my suit jacket, grabbed my briefcase, and headed for the garage. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye before you go? She asked, looking at me strangely again. I decided I had to go all out here, or she was going to suspect something. So I turned, dropped the briefcase, took her in my arms, and kissed her on the lips. My stomach was feeling nauseous, but I suppressed it as I tried to convince her of my feelings. It must have worked because when I stepped away, she said, "Wow, honey, maybe you want to stay home this morning, and we'll spend some time together." I'd like that, I'd like to, dear. But if I'm going to take a half day off, I need to get to work, I replied. I gave her another kiss on the cheek, grabbed my briefcase again, and proceeded to the garage. She was all smiles when I left, so I hoped she wasn't suspicious anymore. If she wanted to act like the loving wife, I could act the loving husband for a little longer. I was home from work by noon, and Melissa had lunch ready for me. I ate and chatted with her as she gathered her bags at the door. "Well, I hope you girls are going to behave yourselves," I told her in as jovial a manner as I could muster. "We always do, honey. But there are always some cute guys there to look at," she quipped back. "As long as it's just looking," I responded. But then I added in a serious note, "You know, it would kill me if you ever decided to play around. I don't think I could survive it." Melissa looked shocked for a moment but managed to smile. "You know I've always been faithful to you, Ethan, and that will never change." "I know. But you're a beautiful woman, and I know you get hit on occasionally. And I know that a stay-at-home mom gets bored," I said, watching her now pale face. She hugged me, and just as Victoria honked out front announcing her arrival, she gave me a quick kiss on the lips and turned away. I thought I saw a tear in her eye as I picked up her bags and followed her out the door to Victoria's car. Minutes later, I watched as the car went down the street, and we waved goodbye to one another, maybe for the last time. After feeding the kids, I called Greg and told him I was coming over for a minute. He acknowledged that he'd be there, so I gathered up the kids and drove the few blocks to his house, taking a copy of Melissa's emails with me. When I arrived, Greg was just finishing up feeding Sophie, and he gave me a big smile and greeting as I entered with Tyler and Dylan. "Hi, you guys," he greeted us. "Come into the family room and we'll watch a video with the kids." "I'm not going to stay long, Greg. We need to talk. Let the kids go into the family room to play." He looked at me quizzically and shooed the kids into the family room. "What's up? And what do you have there?" he asked, pointing at the packet of emails I held in my hand. "These are for you to read," I told him as we sat down at the kitchen table. "First, though, I've got something really bad to tell you, so try to remain calm." "What's the matter? Are you terminal or something?" "No. I wish it were, but it could be terminal for our marriages." Greg suddenly turned pale and was quiet as I related to him the conversation I'd heard between our wives a few days earlier and then gave him the emails to read. "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh," he kept saying as he read the emails, which confirmed what I'd been telling him. I knew just how devastating this was for him since I knew he loved Victoria as much as I loved Melissa. When he was done reading, he put his head down on the table and cried. After that, I told him about David and the Las Vegas investigator, what I'd done so far regarding our finances, and that I was on my way down to a clinic in town to have samples taken on the kids and myself to determine paternity through DNA. I asked if he wanted to come with me. He was shocked. The thought that Sophie may not be his daughter hadn't hit him up to that moment. He suddenly jumped up and ran into the bathroom, and I heard him being violently ill and the dry heaves that followed, the same as my reaction several days ago. But mine was combined with the flu, so I wasn't sure what drove my reaction. Now I knew. After he calmed down, he said he'd come with us. He didn't look well at all as we gathered up the kids and put them in our car for the trip to the clinic. They were very professional there and only needed to use swabs to collect saliva from each of us. I asked them to also do a blood test on my kids and myself to have a record of our blood types. They told us they would send the results by next Wednesday. After leaving the clinic, we drove to Greg's bank, and he made the necessary changes in his accounts. He decided he would contact his broker and insurance agent from his phone at home. On the drive back, I asked if he wanted to come to our house to stay the weekend. "I don't think you should be alone." He thought a while and said okay, but asked to stop at his house to pick up a few things for a weekend stay. After doing that, we drove back to our house. The kids were oblivious to what we were going through, for which I was thankful. Their lives would soon be disrupted, and we should try to keep them unaware as long as possible. Greg and I sat in the kitchen and talked about what we were going to do regarding our wives. After years of betrayal, we decided that we would lay low after they returned and await the investigator's report and the results of the DNA tests before we would plan our next step. I recognized that to alleviate any suspicions, we would have to be intimate with our wives, but I didn't know whether I would be able to respond to Melissa. Greg indicated he might have the same problem, but he said he had some medication samples at home his doctor had given him for a problem he'd had a few months ago. That should do the trick, I told him. I would pick a couple up when I drop you and Sophie at your home on Sunday. We spent a quiet weekend together. Melissa and Victoria called each evening, and we acted happy to hear from them. They were pleased that Greg, the kids, and I were spending the weekend together. Melissa said that would be great to plan for next year too. I thought, yeah, like there's likely to be a next year. Sunday afternoon, before they got home, I took Greg and Sophie home and picked up a few doses of the medication. Then I went back home to wait for Melissa. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard a honk from out front and went out to help. I went out to help Melissa with her luggage. She was all smiles and seemed genuinely glad to see me. I figured, what the hell? If she can act happy, I can act happy too. I put on a similar reaction to her performance. The kids were glad to see their mom, and she spent quite a bit of time with them while I took her bags into our bedroom and unpacked them. I saw a bag of her dirty laundry, mostly her lingerie. I held my breath as I examined a couple of items, but I didn't find any definite signs. I didn't think this meant anything, since if she'd removed them in the evening, they wouldn't necessarily have been put back on again. I exhaled softly, then rejoined my family. We went out as a family for dinner that evening. Later, after the kids were in bed, she came to me in the family room and took my hand, leading me up to her bedroom. "Why don't you get undressed?" she asked me with a smile and turned and went into the bathroom. When she came back, I acted as if I was already asleep. Nothing was happening between us. I began to plan what would come next if I got the evidence from the investigator as I hoped. The next morning, I got a call from David at work and confirmed that the investigator had obtained video and photographic evidence of both Melissa with Brandon and Victoria with Trevor. He would finish his report and have it down to David's office with copies of the recordings by Wednesday. It sounded like Wednesday was going to be a big day. I felt sick again, and it wasn't from the flu this time. He then told me that he wanted to have a meeting with Greg and me to discuss what our plans were going to be. I told him I'd call Greg and get back with him. I called Greg at his work and told him what David had told me about the investigator's report and about his request for a meeting. I could hear Greg crying, and it took a little while to get himself under control. Finally, we decided we would have the results of the DNA tests on Wednesday, so we would meet with David Thursday morning. I called David back and established Thursday at a time of 9 a.m. to meet with him. During the week, Melissa didn't offer any more intimacy, and I didn't feel like pushing it. On Thursday morning, Greg and I met at David's office, and it appeared he was all set up to make a video presentation, as there was a TV set up in the alcove near his desk. We didn't say anything after we shook hands, and he waved us to chairs in front of the TV, explaining he would show it without sound unless we wanted to listen. We both said we'd watch the first viewing without the sound. With no further discussion, he turned on the TV and started the video. The camera must have been set up high above the bed, as we viewed it looking down. Suddenly, I saw a man I didn't recognize get on the bed and lay on his back. He didn't seem any bigger than me. The clarity of the picture indicated the camera must have been very expensive. A few moments later, a woman appeared in dark lingerie and climbed on the bed. I recognized her immediately as Melissa. I was immediately sick and ran into David's bathroom. I noted it was the same outfit she had worn our last evening together. David had stopped the video, and he resumed after I came back. The video continued showing them together. David suddenly turned on the audio, and we heard voices fill the room. Melissa's voice could be heard saying, "I'm sure glad we could do this once a year, Brandon. If I couldn't let my hair down at least once, I'd go stir crazy at home. I love my husband, but I don't think he'd respect me if I did the things I do with you." I feel the same way, Melissa, he responded. I thought you should hear that, David said as he turned the audio off again. We continued to watch, and then David put in another recording, and we watched Victoria and her partner go through a similar scenario. When it was finished, David turned off the TV and then turned to us. What's your pleasure, gentlemen? Do you want to proceed with a divorce? David, we've discussed this and want you to go ahead and prepare the papers, but hold off serving them until we tell you. We also want to get the full names and addresses of Brandon and Trevor. We want to send their wives copies of the report and the video. Okay, I'll get the paperwork going today. The investigator put the names and addresses as well as the names of your wives' lovers in his written report. I'll give you copies before you leave, as well as a copy of the video to do with as you will. Now, what about your children's paternity? We stopped at the clinic on our way over and picked up the DNA report. I have an extra copy for you. Dylan is not my son, I'm sorry to say, but I'd like to find a way to adopt him. You need the father's permission to do that. I realize that, but can we get some leverage to force him to sign away his paternal rights to Dylan? I was thinking about bringing a suit against my wife's lover to collect child support for the 3 years since he was born. If he signed to allow me to adopt, he wouldn't be liable for future child support. That would work. And you both could sue them for alienation of affection and use that as your bargaining tool too. I think we'd like to proceed with those options. Have you confronted your wives about any of this yet? David asked. No, we thought we'd do that tonight. We're getting together for dinner. All right, here are the copies of the report and the video. I'll proceed on this matter as you've directed. I'm so sorry it happened. After leaving David's office, we proceeded to an electronics store and made extra copies of the video. While I was there, I picked up a recording device I would install that weekend. We then proceeded to a copy center to run extra copies of the report. We purchased large shipping envelopes, addressed them to the wives of Brandon and Trevor, and then express shipped them for overnight delivery to their homes in San Diego. A brief handwritten note was included in each envelope explaining who we were and how to get hold of US or David if needed. Back at my office, I explained to my boss that I was going to take a few days of vacation starting the next day to take care of some things at home. My work was up to date, and my staff knew where to get hold of me while I was gone, so he didn't have a problem with my request. While at work the rest of that day, I called our credit card companies and canceled our joint cards, opening one in my name only. Then I canceled Melissa's cell phone. Checking Melissa's email account from my office computer, I found one email to Brandon sent Monday morning saying she'd arrived home safely and was looking forward to next year. There was no response from Brandon. The rest of the day I spent loading parts of the video and pictures from the report into my computer, then creating a website for it. I added more information on times, dates, etc., as well as a copy of the report on mine and the children's DNA tests. When I was finished, I secured the results under a password-protected file and left for the day. When I got home, Greg, Victoria, and Sophie were already there. After fixing drinks for everyone, Greg and I went into the family room, leaving our wives in the kitchen preparing dinner. Is everything ready? Greg asked. I just need to load one of the videos in the player, so we'll be ready after dinner. I got up and retrieved a copy of the video from my briefcase and loaded it into the DVD player. Then I went back and sat down and raised my glass to Greg. He returned the salute. After a friendly family dinner, we adjourned to the family room after sending the kids into a bedroom to watch SpongeBob SquarePants, one of their favorites. I announced that I had a video I wanted to show everyone. The wives looked at me expectantly but puzzled. This isn't something inappropriate, is it? Melissa asked. You promised me you wouldn't bring any of that X-rated stuff into this house. Honey, it's family stuff. It's educational and shows how a family can be destroyed, I said. She just nodded skeptically as I proceeded to start the video. The first bit about the bed in the middle of the room came into view, and then the picture of Brandon getting on the bed followed. Melissa hadn't recognized who the man was when she exploded. You told me this wasn't X-rated. I told you it was educational, I said. Then Melissa came into view on the screen. Oh my God! Oh my God! She screamed. How did you get these? She had gone as white as paste. The video continued, and Melissa and Victoria were both wailing and crying. "Turn it off! Turn it off! I don't want to watch!" Victoria cried. "Don't worry, Victoria. It just started." Greg hollered at his wife. "We have a video of you too." Now they were both in shock, crying and sobbing. The kids had come running to see what was the matter, but we shooed them back to the bedroom before they saw anything. Finally, Melissa managed to gasp out, "Please turn it off. Ethan, please. We need to talk." I mercifully turned it off, leaving them sobbing and covering their tear-stained faces in shame. "Tell us about it, girls. Tell us why you wanted to betray us like that. We trusted you, and that trust is now gone. How do you plan to regain our trust? You broke your wedding vows. How do you atone for that? I don't want to hear any, 'I'm sorry' or 'I can explain,' because nothing you can say will give us relief from the pain you have caused us. We just want to know how you plan to gain our trust again, or our marriages are over and we get a divorce. With these videos, we will get custody of the children, and you will get minimum financial satisfaction from us. So if you think your marriages are worth saving, tell us how you plan to get us to trust you again." "I don't know. I don't know," Melissa cried, looking at me beseechingly. "You are my love. I thought it was just an innocent fling once a year. No one would be hurt. I am your love, am I? Would someone who professes love for her husband deliberately go out and get pregnant by another man? Tell me that, my love." "Oh God, you know." Melissa screamed and went into another fit of screaming and sobbing. Victoria was still sobbing, but she was looking at her sister with compassion. "Greg, I suggest that you take Victoria and Sophie home and work out your own marriage salvation plan. Melissa and I have a lot more to resolve than you do." Melissa stayed huddled on the sofa in a fetal position, crying in deep distress as I saw Greg and his family to the door. Victoria turned her tear-stained face with her makeup and mascara running down her face away from me as she left. I didn't even acknowledge her as I gave Greg a brotherly hug and parted. I returned to the family room and chased the kids back to the bedroom. They were getting concerned that something was seriously wrong in our family, and I decided to take them over to my folks for the night. When I told them, they were eager to go. The grandparents always spoiled them, and they loved it. Spending the night would be a special treat. I went back into the family room and told Melissa, "I'm taking the kids to my folks for the night. I'll be back in about half an hour, so you've got that time to figure out what you're going to do to atone for your infidelity or whether you think this marriage and access to the kids is worth it. The only reason, and I repeat, the only reason, I'm considering letting you stay for a while is because of the kids. I have not thought about Dylan as of now. He is my son as far as I'm concerned. As for the future, I am not sure. They both need a mother, and you are still the best candidate for that job as of now. I will decide if I want to divorce. If you protest, I will make the video, the results of the DNA tests, and the investigators' report public knowledge, including to your parents, siblings, and the congregation of our church. You will no longer have a life in this community. Think about it." She didn't acknowledge me but continued sobbing even louder. I bundled up the kids with their pajamas and toothbrushes and drove off to my parents. They lived about 15 minutes away and were surprised to see us, but I explained that Melissa and I wanted a little privacy. My dad winked at me and said, "We understand, son. Take as long as you like. You don't look very well, though." "I'll be okay, Dad." I arrived back home, and the house was quiet. She wasn't in the family room, so I headed for our bedroom. I found her there gathering up her personal belongings and moving them to the guest room. I just looked at her and said, "Well." She looked like death warmed over and continued sobbing as she tried to gasp out, "This marriage, you, and my kids are more important to me than anything in this world. I'm not going to say I'm sorry for what I did, nor am I going to try to explain it, because you asked me not to do that. Why I allowed myself to get pregnant by him, I can't explain it even to myself. I will stay if you will let me. I realize I have to move out of our marriage bed until you see fit to want me back. I will not withhold my body from you. You can have me anytime you want. I know you can have revenge on me by being with someone else, and I can't stop you. It will hurt me as deeply as I have hurt you. I will do anything you want, agree to any conditions you want to make, to be able to stay here with you and the kids. I realize if I decide on a divorce, it would be the end of me. I thank you for giving me any chance to redeem myself. That was quite a speech, Melissa. Now shut up and listen. You may not realize that the conditions I'm going to need to allow you to stay here may eventually make you want to leave, but I want this so badly I can taste it. Since I found out almost 10 days ago, I've been living in torment, but your torment may take years. I hope you consider that. I have Ethan. I will give you my conditions tomorrow, I told her, and then turned and went back downstairs. Later, alone in bed, I could hear her sobbing most of the night in the guest room. I wanted to go and comfort her, but thinking again about what she'd done made me so enraged I couldn't force myself to go to her. She would have to do her atonement. The next morning I got up early, showered, and dressed casually. It was Saturday, but I wanted to sit down and write out the conditions of our new marriage, established in black and white, so I could get Melissa's agreement when she got up. I sat in the kitchen for almost an hour, writing, crossing out, and finally arriving at a final draft. I waited until 10 o'clock and then went up and woke Melissa. When you get cleaned up, I told her, please join me downstairs in the kitchen. She looked at me and nodded, and I left her. Shortly afterward, I heard the shower running, and in half an hour she was sitting at the kitchen table with me. I want you to know I have given this serious thought and tried not to let my need for revenge overwhelm me and do something I would regret. I don't know whether I still love you, but I honestly hope you'll stay the course on this so I can find out whether I do or not. I miss the wife I once had deeply. She looked at me with a weak smile and a sign of hope. Oh, Ethan, I still want to be your wife again and put this all behind us, but I know I've got a lot to make up for. Yes, you do. And here's what you're going to have to do to make up for it. Then I began to read from my list of conditions. First, you will never talk to another man alone again. I want that to mean you will not even be alone with the pizza delivery boy or the meter reader. Second, there will be no more trips alone anywhere. I don't care if your mother is dying and you want to get to her. If I'm not available to go with you or someone I trust, you don't go. Third, you will notify me whenever you leave the house, where you're going, how long you will be, purpose of the trip, and notify me when you're back home. Fourth, you will have no credit cards or cell phone. I've already canceled those anyway. Fifth, you will make yourself available for intimacy 24/7. Nothing will be held back. If I tell you to do something, you will do it. If you can do it for Brandon, you can do it for me. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand. I always wanted to do it with you, but I was afraid I would lose your respect. Well, I've sure lost any respect I have for you now. Was it worth it? No, she sobbed. What you did to me requires that I include this condition also. Sixth, you will treat me with respect at all times. You will be a happy, obedient wife and mother. Seventh, you will report to me every time you talk or communicate with a man, even if it's on the phone, in a chat room, or via email. I will have ways to verify this, so you had better be truthful and honest with me. Eighth, you will sign adoption papers allowing me to adopt Dylan if I want to. Ninth, you will limit communication with Victoria, in person or other means, to 1 hour a week. I don't know who influenced whom on your affair, but I expect it was you. Greg agrees that we have to keep you two apart. 10th, you will be given a clothing allowance, but I will have approval of any new clothes you buy. I will not have you spending the money I work for to buy clothing for a lover. That is another sore spot with me. And that's pretty much it. Do you have any comments or reservations about these conditions? Punishment for a breach of any of these conditions will be commensurate with the infraction. None. I accept them without reservation. They are more lenient than I would have given you if our positions were reversed. Thank you. You know you will have to get Dylan's natural father to sign off too. I know that, and we are working on getting that signature. You should realize that your lover and Victoria's are not getting off scot-free on this. Copies of the investigator's report and the video have been sent to their wives also. We will be suing them for alienation of affection, and your friend will be sued for back child support and future child support if he doesn't agree to the adoption. I think he will sign the papers and agree never to try to see or contact Dylan until after his 21st birthday. Oh my God, you'll destroy him. So you still have feelings for him? Besides, you should have thought about the future ramifications when you got involved with him and had his baby. She closed her eyes. It was just so easy. We didn't think about being caught. But you did. I had a bad night, dreaming about Melissa and Brandon. It seemed they were laughing at me as they were together. I awoke in a rage with my shirt wet from the sweat that poured off me. I must have made some noise because Melissa came running and asked, "Are you all right?" I was still in the throes of my rage as I responded roughly, "Yes, I'm all right. Leave me alone." "I'm sorry," she said as she backed out of the room and left. The next morning I got up, showered, then dressed for early service at church. Knocking on Melissa's door, I said, "We leave for church in 1 hour." Then I went and started to get the kids ready. We were all ready to go on time, and we were back on our normal schedule. After church, we went to IHOP for breakfast as we normally did. Then we went home to spend a lazy afternoon. I watched the football games. Melissa worked on her crossword, and the kids played with their toys. The only thing not normal was when I went out to the garage at halftime and installed the recording device. From now on, I would have a means of monitoring Melissa when I wasn't home. The other thing that wasn't normal was a telephone call I received that afternoon from Brandon's wife. "Ethan, I want to thank you for the package you sent me. It was most enlightening, and I'm going to use it in divorce proceedings against my husband." "Is once-a-year infidelity sufficient grounds?" I asked. "It's not been once a year. Brandon's been playing around for years. Now I have the proof to dump him and make him pay." "Thank you. Can you do something for me in return?" "Sure. Name it." "I'd like to get a sample from Brandon for DNA testing. I have a paternity problem here. Whatever you send will have to be identified or certified as being from him. Consider it done. Give me a couple of days." "Thanks a lot." "Thank you. You know that my husband's friend Trevor is going to divorce court too, don't you?" "He was playing around the same as my husband." "No, I hadn't heard that. Thanks for the information." Then we signed off. I went in search of Melissa and found her in the family room with the children. She looked at me quizzically. She knew she shouldn't ask who had called, but I decided to enlighten her and cause her more pain regarding her lover. "Who was that?" she asked tentatively. "Brandon's wife. She's divorcing him. Trevor's wife is divorcing him as well." She turned a little pale and hung her head. "It seems," I continued, "they were quite the philanderers, and the material I sent them gave their wives the proof they needed to dump them. It's going to be very expensive for them. They'll be working the rest of their lives to pay for their indiscretions and their lawyers. With my paternity suit against him, Brandon is really in deep trouble." Melissa suddenly jumped up and ran from the room, sobbing. Later she came back and told me, "I'm sorry for rushing off like that. It was just that I suddenly felt overwhelmed by the responsibility I had in breaking up 2 other marriages and possibly a third. It wasn't because I had any feelings for him. I just looked at her. I didn't think anything more needed to be said. So we began a period of atonement. In order to monitor Melissa's movements and communications more thoroughly, I bought an audio recorder which recorded voice-activated signals from tiny transmitters that could easily be concealed. I hid the recorder in the garage next to the phone recording device and placed 3 transmitters throughout the house where visitors might activate them. It was not 100% coverage, but I thought it was sufficient to keep track of her. Our days just dragged on, and I could tell that the pressure she was under to obey my conditions was taking a toll on her. She was appearing more haggard and drawn every day. It must have been hard on me too, because my boss and my secretary wanted me to go see a doctor. They told me that they thought the flu I had earlier was hanging on too long and thought I should be checked for walking pneumonia. I knew what the problem was, a sickness of the mind. Our intimate life was strictly for release. There was no love in it. She responded to my needs without complaint. I kept checking my recording devices every evening when I got home from work, but it was obvious she wasn't communicating with anyone she wouldn't normally. She was calling me faithfully every time she had to leave the house and reporting as my conditions required. But the toll of having to be so severely constrained was bothering me. I hadn't realized how restrictive my conditions were and how loveless our marriage was now. I saw we needed a change. At the end of the first 30 days, we were both so stressed that we were having a tough time living together. Even the kids noticed the strain, and it was affecting them. They were unnaturally quiet and nervous. They watched us with concern on their faces. They felt their world was about to explode, and they were right. Watching them and Melissa was tearing me up. My conditions and need for revenge were destroying the marriage and family I was trying to save. Finally, on a Sunday afternoon while the kids were outside playing in the yard, I took Melissa by the hand and led her into the family room. "We have to talk." She looked apprehensive as I pulled her down onto the sofa next to me. I handed her the manila envelope. She looked at me expressionless for a moment, then broke down and started to cry. I was looking at the rest of our lives. "I love you, Melissa, but I can't keep going on like this. I'm watching you die a little every day, and I suddenly realized I can't live like this. The kids are hurting too. I've given it a lot of thought for the last few days to try to assess my feelings toward you. For a long time, I felt empty, and I think I don't love you anymore. I just wanted to keep going for the sake of the kids. But it's becoming obvious that a split is coming. I can't forgive you and get over your affair, and especially Dylan not being my son. I want you to know that I may never be able to forget what you did, but I can try to forgive you. When I made that decision to forgive you, I suddenly felt better about myself. The reason was my love for my own self-preservation. I don't know whether that makes sense, but I hope it does. Oh, Ethan, I think I understand your reasoning, and I know it was hard to make your decision. I love you so much, and I wanted you back with me. I guess it is what it is, and I have to live with it." Melissa left the house the next morning, and I had a hard time explaining to the kids that Mommy and Daddy have to be away from each other. It was not hard explaining to the rest of the family, though. There was a lot of heat that came from our parents, especially her side. Somehow we managed. Brandon was divorced and now lives in a small condo. He will be paying his wife for the rest of his life, as she does not intend to marry ever again. Victoria and Greg remained married, but it was a loveless marriage. Every time I visit them at their house, I can feel the tension in the air. It's like a ticking time bomb. After much discussion, Greg decided to give their life another try and went to marriage counseling with Victoria. I'm not sure if that will help. I never considered that for me. I adopted Dylan as my son. I could not bring myself to the point where I asked him not to call me Dad. For him, I was his father ever since he was born. I never told him that he is not my son. I was divorced 5 months later, and as per our settlement, I did not give anything to Melissa. She never asked for anything. I did give her visitation rights. Melissa started dating after a year, and 5 years later she got married. I was invited but let the kids attend the event. I never married or dated again. For me, the experience was enough. I could not afford to experience it again. You may call me a coward, but it's better to stay single and love your kids than to get married again in fear of losing everything. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.